Hi Andrea, good morning. I figured I'd make you a video of the garden and show you some tips and tricks. Instead of typing it all up, it'll be easier for you to watch. The first thing you want to do when you start a garden, determining your space and kind of things that you want to grow, make sure you leave yourself enough room. Okay, one of the mistakes that I made here is I didn't leave myself enough room in these rows. These are 2-foot rows, and this is a 3-foot row. You could see there's a lot more space here, even just with that extra foot. So with the 2-foot row, what has happened is I use this cart over here to, refill with dirt and to carry things down. And let me show you one of the biggest mistakes. When I want to go down this row, I can't do it. Especially when this is full with dirt, I just can't bring it down there. So I'm gonna have to invest in another wheelbarrow to bring down there. So just make sure you give yourself enough room, especially if you're doing planter boxes that can't be moved. If you're doing boxes that can be moved, you have a little bit more freedom, but just make sure that you give yourself enough room to walk around everything and to bring carts around stuff, because you will be bringing in dirt more than once a year, especially if you want things to grow properly. The second thing I would say is you want to prepare the land as much as possible. And what I mean by that is you want to make sure that you kill everything off in the beginning. Use Roundup, kill all the grass, kill all the weeds, find yourself a section and really just make sure everything's dead, and then remove all the dead stuff. So I kind of rush that part a little bit, and you're always going to get these little weeds that pop up. Weeding is just a part of gardening, These are always going to come up. These are just all the time. But if you see something like this, I can tell that this is something that's really deep in here. Let me show you. See how deep this is going? This, I can tell, is from underneath this box, and it wasn't dead. And we've been constantly pulling these out over this last year. And look, I'm still going, and it's not even at the bottom yet. You see how long that weed? This is actually probably grass, but that's the whole thing. And if you don't get these in the beginning and kill these all off, you're going to be constantly digging these out all year round like we have been. And it's been kind of a little hectic. But the weeds that grow on top, like these little ones, this is just normal part of gardening. They just come right out. The wind blows one time and you get a bunch of weeds after a rain. But that's just normal part of gardening. But if you don't get the stuff in the beginning, that really heavy stuff, the grasses, you're really going to have a hard time maintaining it all. Another really important tip is to make sure you give yourself enough room for spacing. Okay? You see, these are how plants start when they're smaller. These are celery. This is going to be celery. So this is going to take us, a couple months for this to grow. You could see there's 3 individual plants here. When I put seeds in the ground, I don't plant just one seed. I plant like 2 or 3 seeds. And the hard thing to do is to kill some of them off, but it's very necessary. So like right here, I'll just snip them off with my finger and make sure I just keep one plant like that. If you don't do that, you're going to have an abundance of plants in one area and they're not going to grow properly. So these are radishes here. This is my, these are probably about a week old. And you can see I planted about 2 in each hole. And once you get one, you find the bigger one, the more healthier one. You take the smaller one, and you just snap it off. And now they'll all grow nice and even. Here's a good example of what not to do right here. These are turnips. I planted these turnips really way too close, and you could see it just a mess in here. There's just too much. The turnips are kind of coming out of the dirt. They're not really too deep, and some of them are like they're not even growing very good because they don't have enough space. I actually have to start pulling some of these because you can see the inconsistent growth in them. And if you don't give your plants enough spacing, I mean, look at these right here. There's nothing. And these were all planted at the same time. So I should have gave these a lot more room, and I didn't. And that goes with all of your vegetables. Make sure you give them enough room. Here's a good example of giving them good spacing. You see all these lettuces? They have a lot of spacing. You know, there's weeds. There's going to be weeds in between, and you just come out here and pick them out. But those aren't too bad, as long as you give them enough spacing. Here's some spacing over here with the lettuces. At first, when you first plant them, they're going to be so tiny. You're going to think that you need to plant them close together. Try to avoid that. You want to give them enough space so they can grow. If you don't, what's going to happen is they're going to fight for nutrients, and the roots are going to tangle up underneath the soil, and they're not going to have any room to grow. So when I started this garden, we cleared out this whole space and we put mulch. And the reason we did that is because it was getting muddy out here, and underneath this mulch is the weed fabric. It's about a couple inches thick of mulch, and then you can see there's weed fabric under here. And it's done a pretty decent job of keeping the weeds out. There's some stuff that still grows on top. You know, like these over here are actually green beans. That's a green bean. These are green beans. These are cucumbers. You want to make sure that you are planting things that are in season. You don't want to plant crops that are not in the season, because they're just not going to grow. You're going to wonder, well, why isn't this growing? It's, I've been doing everything right. It's just not the season for it. It's not the temperatures for it. It's not a right sun for it. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Things just happen overnight sometimes, and I'm still trying to figure it out too. Like I had these beautiful tomato plants, and you could see they just started wilting like this. I have no idea what happened, but when that happens, I just pull it out. I inspect the roots to see what's going on, and I don't see anything really wrong with the roots here. So I don't know really what happened with this, but if you see a plant that's diseased, take it out and remove it, because disease in a large garden spreads like a wildfire. And when we had a lot of rain over the summer, we were trying to keep things alive, and we were trying to spray them with the disease killer, trying to spray them with the bug killers, but if something is really diseased and has a lot of bugs on it, and it's getting chewed up really bad, just remove it and take it out of there. I know it's heartbreaking to do it because you've been working so hard to grow it, but it's even more heartbreaking when it takes out the whole garden, and we've had that happen. So these are Brussels sprouts here, and what you want to do is you want to find things like this at the bottom, not just Brussels sprouts, but any plant, and remove anything that's really hitting the soil. You want to take everything out from the soil, make sure there's good airflow. I haven't really groomed these up yet. And the reason you do that is because most diseases come from the soil. And then when it rains, it gets puddled up, and all that disease splashes up onto the leaves, and then the leaves get it. Make sure that, think of your garden your plants, think of your plants as raw chicken. And when you touch one plant and you trim it up and you touch it, make sure you go and wash your hands, wash any tools you're using. If it's diseased, throw it in the trash. These don't look like disease. These are sitting at the bottom. But if it has a disease, if it has a lot of bugs on it, make sure you throw it in the trash and not in the compost, because that will just keep the disease in your garden. It will just keep it growing. You want to make sure to get rid of that stuff. I have a trash can in the little shed over there that anything that's diseased, I'll throw it out. I'll show you what a little disease looks like. So this looks like it had some kind of disease, but I think I might have killed it. It started pretty bad. These are pepper plants, and you see these diseased leaves are kind of falling off now. And I'm gonna see how that goes for a couple of days, but if it starts going more, and you can see there's some here, and there's also some here, and there's also some here. So it's just affecting my pepper plants right now. It's some kind of disease with the pepper plants. Over here, these are called kohlrabies, and they don't have the disease because they just aren't susceptible to the same ones. But they are getting eaten up by some kind of caterpillar. I found a couple caterpillars on here, and those you just try not to use pesticide. That's another big important thing in the beginning. Don't use pesticides. The reason why you don't use pesticides is because if you want your garden to thrive, you need to have bees. Bees are going to pollinate everything for you. So in order for you to get a cucumber, let's talk about the cucumbers. Okay, these are cucumber plants. Here's a small one starting right here. In order for you to get a cucumber, here's another little one down here. A bee has to go into the flower and pollinate it into another flower. Male and female flowers. If you don't get your flowers pollinated, they just shrivel up like that and fall off. And they hit the ground. And you'll never get any crops. So you need to have a mix of colorful flowers in your garden. You know, I put some marigolds because they're pretty hardy. They don't get diseased that easy, and they make a lot of flowers. I got this plant, I forget the name of it, but it attracts so many bees. The bumblebees love it, the honeybees love it. Sunflowers are great. Bees really like the sunflowers. These are jalapeno plants, but even these make flowers. So in order for the peppers to grow, you need to be pollinated. That couldn't be any more true with tomatoes. They need to be heavily pollinated. And the zucchini. I have a zucchini plant back here. And you see, I gave this zucchini plant all this room because this zucchini plant is going to grow 4 feet wide. It's going to take up this. It'll hit the fence, and then it'll probably come out to here, and it'll be a nice big circle. You want to have a nice big area. If I plant too many over here, then all the leaves are going to start hitting each other, and that's how you get mold, and that's how you get mildew. You get a lot of bugs that are hiding in there. The more you space it out and the more room you give it, the better off you're going to be. You can see how far spaced off my pepper plants are. You want to make sure you do that in the beginning. So what I use in the beginning is I just used a topsoil. You can use the cheaper topsoil. I got it all at Home Depot. It was like, I think it was around $2.50 a bag or $1.97 a bag for just the cheap topsoil. And then I used compost. This is underneath this orange tarp here. This is actually all compost. So I had a company called Mulch and More. They came and they just dumped 2 yards of compost in my driveway, and then I just brought it back here. So it's, it's really thick and dense. Let me see if I can break this open. Yeah, you can see how dense of nutrients there are in here. And you don't want to plant directly into the compost. You want to aerate it some. You know, you want to put, I mix it with peat moss, and with the peat moss, it breaks down over time. I'll show you what peat moss looks like. I got this from Ace Hardware, I believe. Oh no, this one's from Home Depot. So this is peat moss. And it's just like a very fine grain peat moss. And you mix this in with your compost and mix it in with your topsoil, and it makes it very aerated. And that way the roots could grow down into it. If it's too tight and compact, like if you just planted into something like this and didn't break it up as much, this is like, you know, that's like, it's pretty hard. So the roots would never be able to get into that. And then your plant just stops growing. And you'll be wondering why your plant's not growing, and it's because the roots don't have anywhere to go. So another tip is, I got this little greenhouse here. I got this off Amazon. I think I paid about $50 for it. It's probably been the best thing I've had in the garden. And the reason is I start all of my seeds in here, and they grow great in this little greenhouse. The reason I don't get plants from the store already grown is because I've already done that, and I've brought new diseases and new bugs into my garden from the store. So we got some plants from Ace Hardware, and they had some sort of disease, and it spread so fast. And one of them actually had some kind of soil-borne disease, and it had some kind of mites in there, and then all the mites spread, and then my whole garden was full of mites, so I had to start treating the soil. So I start all of my plants in this greenhouse. I buy seeds from an online store. That's another important thing. Some seeds work good if you get them from Home Depot, but if you want good quality plants, find a good website. I use seedsavers.com, and I got my seeds off of there. They always germinate. There's some in here that didn't germinate, like this. Cilantro seeds. See, there's nothing up from there. Those are Home Depot. Parsley seeds, nothing came up. Home Depot. A lot of these other ones are all from Seed Savers, and you can see every cell has come up. And these are mostly lettuces, more cucumbers, dill, lettuces, kale, squash. This is a butternut squash. So what we've been doing is, when we plant, we have these. I just had these little knives because, you know, it was from a catering thing a long time ago. I had them in my garage. But make sure you use a good quality label system, and on the back write what day you planted it, and then we put DTH, which means date to harvest. Date to harvest. Date to harvest on this is 1/12/21, and this is for butternut squash. The reason you want to do that is because when you're growing things, you're constantly saying, well, I don't know when this is done. I don't know when this is going to be done. And then if you don't remember when you planted it, you're not going to have a good idea of the date range. Every seed packet on the back is going to tell you how many days to harvest it has. And if you don't keep track of that, you're going to be constantly growing things and not knowing when they're done. So these are broccolis over here. And you can see that they're starting to grow a little head on the broccoli now. But I didn't label this. I have it back here in the corner just because I had some extra seeds. I don't know when this is going to be done. I'm just going to let it ride out and see what happens. But in order to keep track of things, you want to make sure that you really keep track of all your dates. Keep track of things that are going bad. Keep track of things that are going right. This is a cabbage. It's starting to make a little head in there now. But you can see that this cabbage is going to grow really big. So I can't plant anything in those cells over there. Can't plant anything because this cabbage is going to just take it over. One of the things that I've done too in the past is I made square feet. So you could see these ropes on here, and this was something that we did in the beginning to help us out. I wouldn't recommend doing the ropes because we've actually removed all the ropes where we redone the soil, because now that I have the rope here, I can't re-dig up the soil here. Every time you grow something and then you pull the plants out, you need to re-amend the soil. What I mean by that is you need to put more compost in, you need to put more peat moss in, you need to put like black cow, which is a cow manure, or some kind of nutrients to enrich the soil again, because now all the soil is dense. It's, you know, it's all been used up, especially with all the rain over the summer. All those nutrients just get washed out. And if you try to regrow things in the same area and without redoing the soil, you're going to have a lot of problems with the plant. It's just not going to grow right. It's going to give you a lot of difficulty. You're just going to waste a lot of time. Just spend a lot of time in the beginning preparing. Just preparing. Make sure you prepare the soil really well. So if you look online, you can go online and you can find square foot gardening guides, and it'll tell you how many plants you can plant in 1 square foot. So this box is a 2-foot box by 6 foot. So 2 by 6. So this gives me 12 square feet. So this gives me 12 boxes. In each box will tell you how many plants to plant in there by the guide. So on tomatoes, you only can plant 1 plant per square. And you can see where I used to have the ropes here. I took them all off because I had to re-shovel the soil up, and I had to put more nutrients in by getting a shovel in there. So I couldn't really do with the ropes on, so I just took it off. But you want to make sure that you really get that soil mixed up good. You don't want it to be dense. Over here with the lettuce, we did 4 lettuces per square. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. With the radishes, they're small, so you can do 12 per square. Or I'm sorry, you could do 16. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it was supposed to be 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 by 4. Some of them haven't came up yet. They're still a little bit young. But you see, I should have leveled this soil out a little better, because you can see in the areas where it's a little lower. This area is a little lower. They came out better. The ones that are over here, they haven't come up yet. So trying to be consistent is really important. Making sure you have spacing is really important. And that's the gist of it. And, try not to over fertilize. Don't go out buying all these crazy fertilizers and, watching all these YouTube videos of everybody buying, all kinds of fertilizers and nutrients, because you don't need them. The 3 main things you need is compost, peat moss, and if you really want to get a really nice soil, you put black cow in there, which is a cow manure. It comes composted at Home Depot or Ace Hardware. Those 3 ingredients on there, I would say 50, 50, 50. So, or I'm sorry, 35, 35, 35. So you get a 5-gallon bucket, fill up. Oh, look, here's a bee pollinating right here. The honey, that's an actual honeybee. He's down there. See, now we'll get cucumbers on those flowers. If you don't have the bees, then those cucumbers will never grow. But like I was saying, make sure that you really invest in that soil. So you want to do a 5-gallon bucket of peat moss, 5-gallon bucket of compost and a 5-gallon bucket of black cow, and then get yourself a bin and just mix it all up in a bin, and that's what you use as your potting soil. Don't waste your money on potting soils. Don't go buying pre-done potting soils. It's really overpriced. You're not gonna get a lot of it to do what you want to do. So just make your own. See, these are watermelon radishes I planted the other day, and you can see both seeds came up nicely, but I'm gonna pull one of these out because they'll never grow if they're next to each other. So there's 3 here. Just gonna pull them off. Now I have 4 watermelon radishes, and they have a lot of space. They have brand new soil. Another really important thing is making sure you have your irrigation set up. I know this looks like a lot of work with all the irrigation. I actually have this set on a timer, and it's hooked up to my phone. It's hooked up actually through the sprinkler system in my yard. But I can set it to go on and off whenever I want. I'm gonna shut off the video for a second. I'm gonna show you how it is when it's on. Okay, so I just turned my sprinklers on. They're coming on now. Okay. Every area has a different type of irrigation system. You want to base your irrigation on the type of plants that you have. So like your tomato plants, never water tomato plants from the top, because tomato plants get diseases so quickly. So the more you can water directly into the soil, the better. So everything is set up on these little drip lines. So you can see they just drip right into the dirt. You can buy different heads. This is a 1 gallon per hour head. So if you water it for 15 minutes, that's gonna be a 1/4 gallon. And then if you water it for 30 minutes, that's gonna be 1/2 gallon. So you'll know how much each square is gonna get of water per amount of time. So if I watered all this for 30 minutes, each square is gonna get 1/2 gallon of water. Each plant will get 1/2 gallon of water. And you don't need to water it every single day. You wanna make sure that the plants kind of absorb that water. You wanna make sure that it gives it a little bit of time to dry out in between. You don't wanna overwater. If your plant is looking wilty and the soil is wet, it's maybe because you're getting root rot, and you can definitely overwater. You can do more harm by overwatering. Plants that are more like that have lots of leaves, you know, like kale, I have sprayers on these so it hits all of the stems. See, that's more of a sprayer there, and that way it gets all the plants. Ones like this, it'll get the whole bed, just because there's too many plants in between to run one line to each one. So I have the sprayers on it. Same thing with the lettuce. I have this big sprayer over the top that gets them all. And these here, I have sprayers underneath. This one's a little blocked up. But the more automated you can be with your watering system, the better. And you can get a watering system right to your hose. Just go to Ace Hardware or Home Depot. You can get a little automatic watering system. It's like $20. You put a couple batteries in it, hook up to your hose, and you can set a timer. And then, you know, just set up a little homemade watering system and set it to go off every other day, or, you know, every morning at 9 a.m., 8 a.m. You want to water first thing in the morning, really early. Don't wait until the afternoon or the evening, because then your plants are going to be wet all night. If your plants are wet all night, it's just going to be inviting bugs. It's going to be inviting diseases and fungus and mold, especially in the hot, humid Florida weather. Always water early in the morning and as close to the soil as possible. Don't water all over the top of plants, and Just try not to do that. And then, you know, if you can just get regular soaker hose, you can look it up. It's called soaker hoses. That'll run right off of your regular hose system. You can run soaker hoses in there, and it's completely fine. I actually wish I probably would have done soaker hoses in here, but it's too late to change it now. So, if you have any other questions, just let me know. I'll be glad, happy, and to help you.